Before finishing this, let's take a moment to talk about Shattered Crystal for the 3DS. It's okay. Not great, but okay. It doesn't have a lot of problems, but the few it does have are really big ones that almost ruin it for me. Okay, so here's how the normal levels go. You explore a series of small maps, connected by these big slingshot thingamajiggies that fling it back and forth between the multiple planes. You could consider these mini-acts, I suppose. I've only played the demo, but from the impression I got, the level design is pretty repetitive. Swinging, bashing, and zipping around is all really satisfying, but there's only so many combinations of these they can make before you start to feel like you're just going through the same motions over and over again. As the game goes on, they find little ways to mix things up, but overall it kind of feels like they just had some guy whip up a few assets, click and drag them around, and copy and paste them a few hundred times. Oh wait, that's exactly what they did. Anyway, your goal on these main levels is not simply to reach the end, but collect crystal shards along the way, usually 5 I think. The problem with this is that these collectibles aren't just there to give really dedicated players a better ending or an extra secret boss or something nice like that. They're mandatory, they're used for a token system, and there are points where you just aren't allowed to advance any further unless you go back and collect some more crystals, or you just happen to get enough of them on your first run, in which case you were really lucky. Now, this on its own isn't that damning. I was able to find a few of them easily enough, and you don't even need all of them by the end of the game, just most. But on my second run through the first stage, I used the map on the 3DS's bottom screen to get a better feel of the level as I went on, and it's very helpful, but it sheds light on the stage's biggest flaw. There are several bottleneck points that once you've gone through, you can't backtrack. Now I'm not talking about those slingshot thingies, at least those I can choose to go through at any time I want when I'm done with an area, so if I do skip something that's in that part of the stage, it is my fault to some degree. The kind of snafus I'm talking about are points where, say, the path splits in two, and one has an updraft for Tails to ascend on, and the other has a block for Sonic to smash through. When I get to these points, I tend to think, I'll just check out the one pathway, and if I don't find a crystal shard here, I'll just backtrack a bit and go the other way. But most of the time, you can't do that because you'll hit a spring and shoot through a platform or something and be unable to go back. You know how in most Mega Man games, you can just press down and the jump button at the same time to drop to a lower platform? Here, you can't do that. There were many times when I found myself cut off from the crystal shard that I could see just on the other side of a wall, just barely off screen, that I would have been able to get if only I had the foresight to go the other way. This is stupid. I love exploration, I'm all for replay value, but that needs to be up to the player. It can't be forced on them. Nothing's more annoying than a game telling you that it wants you to play it a certain way, and that you're wrong for trying anything different. I wouldn't mind looking around for these collectibles if it was reasonably easy to do, but these points of no return will force you through these stages over and over and over again because you went down the wrong path or played as the wrong character. This would be so much less time consuming if only there was more room for backtracking. Some have classified this as a Metroidvania game, but I don't think it deserves that. At least those sorts of games don't expect you to get everything perfectly right on the first time and punish you with such one-track minded gameplay. Criticize the excessive backtracking of those sorts of games all you want, but at least you can backtrack, at least as an option. To me, this is legitimately bad game design. I'm not talking about boosters and whatnot, I can see those are a matter of personal preference, but this shit would aggravate anybody after a while. All it does is make me super cautious and watch my every step in case I trigger some scripted event that forces me to another part of the map and doesn't let me go back. I don't like feeling like this. It's not fun. It's a dick move, and just fixing that one huge flaw would make this game so much more enjoyable. As you can probably guess, I don't care for the auto-run sections in this game either. In fact, these ones are even worse than the console version. I'd much rather play something like Audio Surf, which is essentially the same thing, only with so much more depth. The racing stages are pretty painless. If you like Sonic Rivals, you'll like these. One thing that's really weird to me about this game, though, is the scripted events. I don't mind there being a few here and there, that's par for the course for Sonic games nowadays, and there really aren't that many. But they go on for a really long time. There are stretches where you can just watch Sonic run along by himself for like 10 to 15 seconds and nothing really exciting is even happening. Wow, what a feast for the eyes this is. So glad I don't have to do anything myself. Given that the actual gameplay is fairly slow, boost button aside, this feeds into that whole speed versus control thing I touched upon in part 1. That you can have gameplay and spectacle, but never at the same time. I'll give my full thoughts on this in the final video, as I feel it's a core problem with both games, though Rise of Lyric much more so. These segments get even more painful whenever I'm forced to one of those bottlenecks I mentioned. No, go the other way, let me go back, no, stop! Yeah. Anyway, Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is a decent game. The music is nice, the level design is pretty good, if a little repetitive, and the other more gimmicky stages are over quickly enough not to detract from the core gameplay much. It's mainly the whole token system that brings it down, and it'll be a bigger problem for some people than for others, though because of how it was handled, it's a pretty big problem for me. Still, not a bad game. Now back to Rise of Lyric. When I started this review, I made it clear that I don't think Rise of Lyric is a bad game. But I can't say it's a good game either. For one thing, this game isn't finished. It clearly isn't. The moment I realized this was when I made it to this place. And it was really driven home moments later, when I saw these trees that looked like they were pulled right out of Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier. A game for the PSP. I'm really not one to let a game's graphical fidelity or resolution or frame rate or whatever get in the way of my enjoyment of it. The art direction is much more important to me, and even if the graphics of a game aren't that good, as long as the visuals are inspired and interesting to look at, I think that makes up for it. I really don't care that much for this game's art design though. Lyric's robots are so boring to look at, and you see them almost constantly all throughout the game. I'd like to see a game where you fight these redesigned classic Batniks from the show. Those look cool, and I think it shows the finer points of this art style. The environments are just kinda grimy though. Take a look at this fine game, Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction. This game still looks good today, even a little nicer than Rise of Lyric. And it was released 7 years ago. Not only are there a lot of cool designs, but the colors are nice and everything just looks a little more clean. Next to a game like this or A Crack in Time, Rise of Lyric just feels kinda blech. Some areas, like this, look okay. But what the heck happened here? Just look at this earlier version of it. Doesn't it remind you of something? Oh yeah. It almost looks like Sandover Village from Jak and Daxter, and it's beautiful! So much more inspired than anything you'll see in the final product. Heck, this game wants so badly to be Jak and Daxter, it's not even funny. Here's a few similarities it shares with that game. You help out a burly party-talking dude with something and he lends you his boat. You investigate ruins built by precursor-like beings called Ancients. One of them is even a partially sunken city. Heck, even the interior looks pretty much the same. There's a gameplay segment where you make your way up the scaffolding built around a giant robot and climb all the way up to its head. You travel back in time to kick off the events that get the game going in the present, just like Jak, as Mar, would later go on to basically set up his own adventures in the distant past, even leaving things like his armor laying around for his younger self to pick up in Jak 3. The villain wants to activate an army of giant robots to completely terraform the planet. I could go on, but you get the idea. Don't get me wrong, guys. I don't have a problem with any of this. These games are made by the same people after all, it's not like they can rip off themselves, and it's not like I don't think any of these things could work in a Sonic game, but these rehashed elements are so superficial. They don't mean anything or add something special to this world. These artsy elements can't save this game, because they fail to give this game the same spirit, the same quality that Jak and Daxter had. They don't make this game special, or timeless, or an instant classic, or any of the nice things you could say that game is, because this gameplay just isn't anywhere near as good. I love Jak and Daxter. It's one of my favorite games. Yeah, it's a collectathon, but it's the most rewarding collectathon I've ever played. Every little thing I touch, every minute gesture I make, feels so important. Once you collect a precursor orb, it's not gonna reappear like a coin in a Mario game, and you can get a new power cell for doing whatever every few minutes at the right pace. I always feel like I'm making real progress. Nothing I ever do in this game feels unnecessary or like a waste of my time, and there's so much going on in it, but there's so little padding that I can beat it in a day, a sitting even. I'm always accomplishing something, and the game makes me feel great for it. If you complete, say, 3 or 4 parts of a 5-part objective and leave the level or get sidetracked by something else, no problem. The game will remember everything you've done, and you can pick up from where you left off whenever you damn well feel like it. Heck, even the backtracking is pretty lax. Well, there are some little things here and there, like hatching a bird in one of the earlier stages that'll only appear in later areas if you do that. I can only think of one instance, where the backtracking ever got really bad. And that's activating the yellow eco vents when you're in this level, so you can blow up a boulder in this level, and reach a collectible that you couldn't on your first run through. I don't even mind. This is one of the least punishing, least demanding collectathons I've ever played, and because of that, it's my favorite game in the world to 100%. So how is it that the brilliant minds behind a timeless gem like this would go on to make this? It's got more than a few bugs, and while most of these won't happen to everybody, it really shows how unpolished this game is. Again, look at this. What happened? Why doesn't this game look like that? It should! Some have said this build was originally developed for the PS4 and Xbox One, which was made a Nintendo exclusive after the fact, so it had to be downgraded just so the Wii U could take it. But that's bullshit. Heck, there's a glitch in the game that actually makes it look better. And if you trigger this glitch and your Wii U doesn't explode or something, well then great, I guess. The nicest thing you'll ever see in the final product, the thing they seem to have put the most love and care into in this Sonic game, is a freaking dinosaur skeleton in the desert. Woo! Something terrible must have happened sometime during the game's development. Somebody spilled coffee on the lead programmer's hard drive, or maybe they got fired. Oh wait, that actually did happen. Yeah, believe it or not, Chris Sen, a level designer for Sonic Extreme, who was working on this game, got fired a few months before this game's release. I know it's just one guy and it's pretty late in the game's development, but I'm hearing that other important people were fired earlier on as well. Maybe there was a lot of drama behind the scenes that got in the way of the game's development, and this is the result. A game that's only some of the things it promised to be. It's amazing how a few little things going wrong can affect the product we get. That said, it's not just the graphics or the bugs that bring this game down for me quite so much as the gameplay does, which, well, okay, suffers a huge core problem that, again, I'll get to in the final video. Just think of it as a punchline to this whole joke. Some people are saying this is the next Sonic 06, that the Dark Age of Sonic is back. I find that offensive. This game isn't anywhere close to being on the same level as Sonic 06 in terms of gameplay ideas or even on a technical level. You don't get stuck to walls, there's no ball puzzle. It's not like I've never fallen through a wall or something in a Jak and Daxter game, and look at the praise these get. This game is just fine. It plays fine. It controls just fine. It's not that kind of bad. It's not horrible. It's just dull, which I know some people would say is even worse. It's admittedly pretty mediocre. I really don't mind Rise of Lyric much. I think it's okay, but that's the problem. It's just okay. I could be pretty forgiving towards games like this. Heck, even though I just bashed Sonic 06, there are even things in that game that I really like. That's why my experience with this game seemed relatively painless compared to most people's. But I won't pretend it's anything special. I don't like rating games with a number, since so many games that score a 9 or a 9.5 just aren't enough for the fans not to get mad because their favorite game that they've never played got a bad score, and most people won't even touch a game below an 8. A lot of people will only bother playing something if it's outstanding, amazing, out of this world, raises a bar, changes the face of the games industry, a pinnacle of game design and everything that video games have the potential to be, the new standard of gaming. And anything less than that gets collectively thrown in the garbage. It's not so black and white for me. A lot of games I've made videos about aren't testaments to how ingenious games can be. They fall into a pretty wide middle category where personal taste accounts for more than anything else. It's not just this black and white divide with a perfectly straight line neatly drawn down the middle. For better or worse though, that does seem to be a lot of people's mindset. If something doesn't blow them away, then it falls right into that bad category. Anything I call okay or decent, they just call crap. They don't want to waste precious hours of their life or money that they could spend on a good fair bit of groceries on something like this, and that's perfectly fine. But I did. Lots. And I like some things about it. I had fun, kinda. But yeah, it's just kinda good. It's kind of a Sonic game that's kind of okay and kinda works. Kind of. And I understand that that's not enough for people. If you don't like Sonic Boom, there isn't much I can say to convince you to give it a go, and I'm not sure I should even try. Anyway, onto the final boss. Like everything else in this game, it's okay. Everyone gets a chance to shine, it's not over too quickly, and I have no clue what's going on anymore.
Looks like you and your friends got the job done. Not bad.
Oh gee, so glad you approve, Shadow. Prick. Well, that's the game. Tune in next time to hear my final thoughts on Rise of Lyric and what I think ultimately stops it from being something great.